This is Aaron Golub, host of the Blind Ambition podcast. We'll be bringing you world-class leaders, entrepreneurs, and athletes, people who have overcome obstacles and used their ambition to create enormous success in their lives. If you enjoy this podcast, if you get anything out of it, the only thing I'll ever ask is that you subscribe, rate, and review. Hope you enjoy. Awesome. Well, thank you all for tuning in again this week. I'm joined by an amazing guest, Ben Newman. Ben, thanks so much for being here.
Aaron, thank you so much for having me. And it's always great to spend time with you. You know that from the time we spent when having you on the burn, that you motivate me. I'm inspired by you and was excited to get the invitation.
Appreciate that. Thank you. Why don't you walk everyone through your story? It's really interesting because your background is very similar to mine in the professional world. Of you started off in the financial services industry, which I'm still in and I love, but then you're also a speaker, which I love as well, and I am a speaker. And what caused you to make that transition, and talk about that journey between the two?
Well, I love the question, and it's interesting. So many people see all the sports memorabilia, behind me, and they think that that's the world that I've always operated in. And yes, I do a lot of work in the sports world in multiple different sports. However, and even to this day, so much of my work is in the corporate space. And as you alluded to, which has been fun for us to connect, so I can share some things to sharpen your iron in the financial services world. My professional career, I was a paper broker for a handful of years in Chicago. But then I came back to St. Louis, which is home for me, and I was a financial advisor. And that's really what gave me the opportunity to build a platform in order to speak and to coach. And I say this very humbly, not to impress anybody, but back in 2006, as a result of a very fast start over my first 2 years for a Fortune 100 financial firm, I got invited to speak for the first time. And I was a 26-year-old kid, Aaron, and they're like, we'll pay you $500 to come tell us what you're doing. I'm like, this is a thing? You can get paid for this?
Yeah.
And so I went, and I really fell in love. It wasn't so much the opportunity, to make money or to share successful sales language. It was to connect people to a deeper rooted purpose. I now call it the burn, to identify what truly drives them. And once I locked in on the concept of that burn, the rest was history. And it's been a blessing for me now, fast forward, to have been doing this for 15 years and to not only have the opportunity to work in the corporate world, but to also work in the world of sports.
So have you always had this passion, or as you say, this burn inside of you, whether it has been as a kid or in the financial industry, or is it something that developed over time as you found your true passion or true burn of being a speaker, being a coach?
Well, it's a great question, Aaron. And, my story really is of adversity and challenge. And I'm a big believer that how we respond to challenge and adversity determines the story that we write. And I had to grow up fast. So many of my mentors and coaches referred to me as an old soul. And I had a mother who was divorced when I was 6 months old, never knew my parents together. And fast forward a handful of years after the divorce, and my mother was diagnosed with a rare muscle disease called amyloidosis. And each and every single one of you in your muscles, you have amyloids. If you have an excess of amyloids, you would have a disease called amyloidosis. At the time of her diagnosis, there were 2 hospitals in the United States treating the disease, the Mayo Clinic in Minnesota and the Boston Medical Center. And my mother's team of doctors chose for her to go into your backyard, Aaron, up to Boston. And my mother received treatment at the Boston Medical Center. And she met a woman by the name of Dr. Skinner. And upon meeting Dr. Skinner for the first time, Dr. Skinner tells my mother, you're only the second woman under 40 years old we've ever seen or heard of having this disease. And they gave my mother 2 to 4 years to live. And Aaron, my mother ended up taking out a journal and unleashing her positive mental attitude onto the world. She would write, beat the statistics, beat the odds, live with a disease that is chronic and fatal, believe in yourself, combat anything, purpose in life. And my mother's purpose was to continue to lead her boys regardless of her pain. She recognized that your purpose overtakes your pain when it's significant enough. I now refer to that as the burn, which my mother taught me, which is there's this fire inside of you that actually ignites your why and your purpose, that then causes you to take the necessary action to attack what it means for you to perform at your highest level. My mother used to come to the dinner table with an IV stand when we had 24-hour nursing care in our house, Aaron, to ask me how my day was at school as a 7-year-old boy. And so my mother taught me what it means to fight and to have conviction and have passion. And even though my mother passed 11 days before my 8th birthday, that's where my burn lies today. And it's a burn that won't go out. And that's to every single day to embrace the opportunity to help individuals connect to their stories as I continue to write my mother's story.
Yeah, I love that. The passion, the relatability, it speaks to a lot of people, and I love that. What is your passion today with everything you're doing? I know you've been able to become one of the top speakers in the world. You've been able to work with lots of college and professional teams, corporations. You're an author. What drives you today? What is your focus? Is it continuing to be an amazing speaker? Is it continuing to build within these sports programs? What is the driver today?
Well, first off, let me mention, Aaron, that I'm not the only one that has a story. And so as I share my mother's story, I know that everybody has a story of challenge and adversity and a manner in which they choose to respond. That's one of the things that inspires me about you and your incredible story. Going against all odds to do what you did with the game of football, right? I mean, it's absolutely incredible. We all have a story. And so as I'm sharing part of my story, and I know it's the same for you and for all your listeners, every episode, take a look at Aaron's story, take a look at my story, but also remember you have a story that'll provide perspective that you can keep fighting. And at some point in time, we have to get off the sideline and we have to choose to give ourselves permission to absolutely attack the opportunity to be great one day at a time.
100%. I think that so many people don't understand that they have a story, they have a vision that's important. They see someone's story like mine, or they see someone like you, and they think that it's impossible or they can't do it because of X, Y, or Z reason. And that's just not true. Everyone brings something to the table. Everyone can accomplish their goals if they work at it. I am a long way from where I want to be, but in the past year since I've known you, I've also made it a long way. And I think that if everyone takes that approach, you can accomplish anything that you want.
And it's so true. And it's, I always say, we all have the opportunity to give ourselves permission to paint on the canvas of your imagination, whatever it is that you want to achieve. But that's not enough. You can't just put the vision up there. There's far too many people these days that they paint their vision and they forget to go to work. They tell you how great they want to be, then they forget the work piece. It's not enough to just say that you want it. Give yourself permission to identify the daily action steps that are in alignment with what that vision is. Go to work one day at a time, because your action is what tells us the real story. Your daily action, the consistency of your behaviors, is what's going to determine whether or not you end up hitting your vision or how long it takes for you to hit your vision.
Yeah, 100%. That's powerful. Going back to my previous question now, what drives you today? What is your focus? Is it becoming more of a, continuing to be one of the top speakers in the world? Is it building out your business within athletics? What is your focus?
So, for me, I feel that a lot of the things that you mentioned, and it's a very humbling thing to be recognized as a high level speaker, to be able to do the things that we've done in the world of sports. Those are all a byproduct of showing up every day and having a great team and me choosing to be an example by giving my best. And so that's really the big goal, is to be my best every single day, to identify and to pursue what does my highest level of performance look like. And I believe that by doing that, by 72 years old, this might sound a little wild, but I believe in vision. 72 years old, I still to this day, I don't know why I chose this date, but I'm going to be sitting on the beach. I'm going to be smoking a cigar, drinking a Budweiser. Now, I'm a St. Louis born kid, so I'm a Budweiser guy, so I like Bud Heavy. And I'm going to be taking a sip out of that Budweiser, and this little bird is going to come down from heaven, and the bird is going to wink at me, and the bird is going to be my mom coming down from heaven, letting me know that we have impacted 1 billion people. And that's really the big goal. I can't do that alone. I have the opportunity to do that by being invited to be a guest on podcasts like yours, or doing a speaking engagement, or working with Alabama football, K-State football. hopefully sharing something with those players that they take on to their lives, that they share with somebody else, and we're all on this journey together. And so I share that story of the bird coming down and winking, and I tell you a funny side story. I was working with a boxer, and he was just really upset. He was away on training camp. And a lot of people don't realize when boxers go away for training camp, they do not see their families for 4 to 6 weeks typically. He had a young daughter, and I was sharing this story, and this was about 5 or 6 years ago. And my daughter, Kennedy Rose, at the time was about 5 or 6, and she hears me working with this boxer. And she comes up after hearing me share that story, and she says, "Daddy, don't you know that birds don't have eyelids?" And I said, "Kennedy," I said, "hey, this is my story. This bird has eyelids." And so I always add that to the story, which that's a true story. And I didn't know that birds didn't have eyelids, but I share that. I share that to say that for all of us, be as detailed as you want with the vision. But then, as I mentioned, you have to choose to attack it every day. And I feel blessed to have a great team, but also, strong work ethic and discipline to be an example for my kids, to be an example, for you, Aaron, right? For you to ask me things from financial services. I left the financial services practice where people thought I was crazy. I was in the top 1 to 2% of financial advisors in the world. And now from a coaching perspective, I hope the example that I set when I was an advisor with some of the things I've shared with you have made an impact for you to be a better advisor. So I think no matter where we are in our season of life, choose to be your best and write the best chapters in that moment.
Yeah. What I find really interesting is how you've been able to be really creative with everything you've done. Talk a little bit about the story of how you got Alabama interested in working with you, how you got Nick Saban's attention, because it really interests me.
Yeah, especially you being a former college football player, and I know your affinity for great coaching and college football. So Coach Saban, after one of his press conferences after winning a national championship, this is goes back to 2012, and so he's in his post-game press conference, and they win the national championship. And one of the reporters says to Coach Saban after the game, "When are you going to start planning for next year?" And Coach Saban says, "Tonight." And the reporter says, "Tonight? Like, Coach Saban, what do you mean tonight? Like, you just won." And essentially, Coach Saban says, "I don't think you understand me. When I do something, I do it better than anybody else. If I were a street sweeper, there'd be a sign out in front of my house that says the best street sweeper in the world lives right here." And so I hear this press conference. I always had this dream. I was going to work for Alabama football. I mean, that's the most storied football program in the history of college football. And so I planted the seed. I am a performance coach for Alabama football. And I'll never forget, I contacted my buddy Joe Duver at Vinyl Images here in St. Louis. I said, "Joe," I said, "I need you to make me a sign." He's like, "Anything for you, Ben. What do you need?" I said, "I need you to make me a street sign." And I mean like an actual street sign. It needs to be big. It needs to be orange. It needs to be obnoxious. It needs to be heavy. A street sign that says the best street sweeper in the world lives right here with a cute street sweeper truck on it. He's like, "Who in the hell is this for?" I said, "Joe, we're sending this to Coach Saban." He's like, "Have you lost your mind?" I said, "Joe, I have not lost my mind. Make my sign. I'll come get it when it's ready." So I show up a couple weeks later, and here they have. It was a street sign, Aaron. And it said, "The best street sweeper in the world lives right here." And I put a little letter in there. I made the world smaller. And what I did was I talked about us being at Michigan State at the same time. He was the head football coach. I was just a student. He didn't know who in the world I was. Congratulated him on the process, and then included a copy of one of my books called Own Your Success. I knew that I had an advantage in sending a street sign, Aaron, that Coach Saban has hundreds, if not thousands, of letters per day that he receives at his office. You can't send him a letter. You need to send a box that's heavy and it's the size of a street sign so that Coach Saban could say, "What in the world is in that box?" And sure enough, it worked. It got his attention. There's a letter here right over my left corner that actually came from him. And down at the bottom, it says, "P.S. Your sign is hanging front and center in the Saban home recruiting room." He hung that sign for 3 years. The interview process, they put me off for 3 years. And finally, in 2017, I was approved to become a speaker. And now it's been a blessing that I'm in my 4th year serving as a mental conditioning coach for Coach Saban in the program.
So when you sent that sign to them, what was the process like past then? Did you have to continue to follow up with them, or did you have to wait until they reached out to you to say, hey, we want you to become an actual speaker?
Yeah, great follow-up question. So it took a lot of time. I mean, that's one of the things about Coach Saban. There's a tremendous amount of due diligence and patience that people have to show. Just nobody could just knock on the door and walk into the building and start speaking to his football team and become part of the organization. So I became pretty much a pen pal with Saban. I would send him books. He would write me back. That process started. And then their behavioral therapist, Ginger Gilmore, she and I built a relationship. And we would go back and forth. Sometimes it would be every few months, sometimes it would be 6 months. Then it went for about an entire year, Aaron. I didn't hear anything. And in those first few years, because this goes back to 2014 when I first got the first letter, what ended up happening is there'd be, it's not the right timing. It kept putting me off. Well, finally, I was working with the starting third baseman for Alabama baseball. And I knew I was going to be in Tuscaloosa. And I sent an email to Ginger and I said, do you think maybe it's time? I'll be on campus. I'd love to meet you. And sure enough, I came in, I interviewed with Ginger. I interviewed with some of the coaches. I interviewed with Coach Cochran, the strength coach at the time, and they approved me as a speaker back in 2017, and the rest is history.
That's incredible. That's amazing.
But I think, for everybody listening, I don't want you to hear, oh, it's cool, this guy works with Alabama football. Yeah. I want you to recognize back to that permission, and that's why I appreciate the follow-up questions, Aaron. Identify who your Nick Saban is. Identify who your next big opportunity is, and give yourself permission to go chase it down. Because the reality is somebody has to do the mental training for the Alabama football program. Yes. And I recognize that I wanted to be that person. Now, Coach Saban is incredible. There's actually 5 of us that do work on the mental conditioning side. I'm the only one who's not a doctor, but it's been amazing to be part of the program. It's amazing to be, they all call me coach when I'm there. I love these kids. I hope they love what I bring to them. And it's been amazing having the opportunity to grow. But I want you all to experience that with whatever courageous action step you can take in whatever your business is. Don't wait. Don't sit on the sidelines. Give yourself permission and go attack that next big opportunity.
Yeah, I love that. I think that so many people are too afraid to take that first step, or not willing to put in the time or be as creative. And you have to understand that everyone has these massive goals and they don't come overnight. They're not going to happen tomorrow. But if you put in the time and the effort, you will accomplish everything that you want down the road.
I firmly believe that to be the truth. And I think the most important thing is, through that entire process, I never got too emotional. I never gave up. All I did was I invested my time in the relationship because of my burning desire to know that I had it in me to make a difference in the program. And so when I had months where you didn't hear anything, that 1 year where it was nothing, I was still every day, I believe in daily affirmation statements. I am the performance coach for Alabama football. I said that to myself for years before I even stepped into the Malmore Athletic Complex for my first interview. For years, I was telling myself that. And so I think you have to believe, you have to put action behind the belief, and do it for the right reasons. Don't do it because it's going to be awesome for your resume. Do it because you believe in your work and the fact that you want to make a difference.
100%. That's so important. I love that. Where do you see yourself going in the future? Where do you see yourself 5-10 years down the road with all this? Still with Alabama, still with K-State? Do you see yourself taking your speaking, your coaching in a different direction, or staying in the same lane?
Well, for me, it comes down to, getting to those billion people. And part of the way that we're going to get there, we have a really significant coaching team that a lot of people aren't aware of. I probably don't talk about it as much as I should, but that coaching team is actually run by an old friend of mine. He's incredible. His name is Jeremy Patty. He's down in Dallas, Texas. We have a team of 11 coaches. So even though my schedule is very tight, it's an opportunity for us to continue to serve when people reach out for one-on-one coaching or for coaching of their teams. And then we also have a mini speakers bureau. There's over 20 speakers. That's run by Monique Saar. She's in Denver, Colorado. And we have Sean O'Brien, who runs our Uncommon Coaching program. And so we built a team of individuals that are helping us lead the next generation of leaders, the next athletes that can be impacted by some of the principles that we found have had a significant impact on others. And so for me, it all comes down to the impact. It's, helping those coaches grow their businesses, helping those speakers grow their businesses, and determining the most significant impact we can have in this fight to get to 1 billion.
Yeah, no, I love that. And it's one of the reasons why I follow you so closely. Two of my biggest goals are to be a top financial advisor in my industry and be one of the most well-known, sought-after speakers in the world. And it's things that come over time, and it won't happen tomorrow, and it won't happen in 6 months from now. But continuing to do the daily actions, those two goals will be accomplished down the road.
Without question. And one of the reasons why I say that is because, Aaron, I know that you do things for the right reasons. You do things with passion. You do things with the fire, and you do things with a willingness to stare your fears in the face and to take action. And, obviously your football career and what you did is a true testament to that.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And, thank you for taking the time to come on. Where can everyone find you and see all of your content online?
So at Continued Fight is the absolute best way for us to stay connected, at Continued Fight. And if anybody is interested, our next book is actually coming out on August the 3rd. The title of the book is Uncommon Leadership. It explores the 11 ways that the greatest leaders lead, stories of great leaders that have had a significant impact on my life. If anybody's interested in the book, you can DM me the word uncommon. And you can also DM the word prize fighter. And in doing so, as a result, in appreciation of our friendship and you having me on the show, I will send a free Prize Fighter Day course, which helps people design and outline what it looks like for them to win one day at a time. But at Continued Fight on Instagram is the best way for us to stay connected.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you so much for listening to this podcast. If you enjoyed it at all, if you got one thing out of it, we'd really appreciate it if you would subscribe, rate, and review. Thank you.